to Japan by River Cruise. I am your host, Bobby Judo, calling in from southwestern Japan.
Hello, welcome to Japan by River Cruise. I am your host, Ollie Horn, calling in this time from Berlin.
I totally forgot about you. We're going to do it together as always, and we've got a great show lined up. On this show, we'll be talking about the recent... On this show, we'll be talking... Off to a great start. Talking about...
Maybe I should be the host.
Okay, you do it.
We're going to be talking about the recent news item which Bobby prepared and didn't send me the link for. Bobby, what's the item?
The recently released city ranking, best cities in Japan. And as always, we've got your River Cruise recommendation for this week, right, Ollie?
Yes, this week I'm going to be recommending a ninja-themed river cruise that runs through Kitakyushu's longest river. We ask whether the see no ninja, sorry no refund policy is fair.
Also, the Japanese River Cruise Association is asking for submissions for its first ever Yurukyara mascot design contest. The only requirements are that the mascot design be family friendly, river cruise themed, and double as a life raft just in case. More on that later in the show, but first, Soap Talk.
Bobby, quick question. Why do we call it Soap Talk?
We call it Soap Talk because I cannot let go of the way you mispronounce the phrase small talk in Japanese.
Oh, sekenbarashi.
Yep, I feel like that was a little closer, but it's still a little too soapy. So
thanks, Bobby.
Yeah.
How's your week been?
Good. I had Sunset Live, which is one of my favorite jobs of the entire year. It's an outdoor music festival that runs for a full weekend here in Fukuoka, and you know this because you attended it with me when we were doing our stand-up comedy in Japanese. And
yeah, we've covered this before. Reggae Babies.
Yeah, the Reggae Babies venue was the Sunset Live venue. But
yeah, it's a great festival, isn't it? It's beautifully picturesque. It's quite reasonably priced. I remember the music being sensationally good. I remember Suchmos being just absolutely rocking it.
It seems I think 3-4 years in a row, and they killed it every year until they got too big, and now I think they're probably too famous to come to this one. But we got a lot of great artists this year, good lineup. And as always, I was one of 3 or 4 MCs who kind of like we rotate around stages. I don't know if you remember the first year that you were there when they had like all the MCs on one stage getting ready to kick off the festival. They were like, "All right, and now Bobby's gonna scream in English." And I was like, in Japanese, I was real clearly, I was like, そうだった、こういう役割だったんですね。私はこのためにいるんですね、みたいな。I was like, oh, right.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm here.
This is
I'm just the white guy to say something, yeah. So is that what you're doing? Is everyone having a good time?
Are you ready? But no, so I usually do...
But you do more than that, though. Don't you like talk about the music and stuff? I was always quite impressed that you actually knew the bands and stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. It's more than talking about the bands. What you have to do is kind of do all the announcements for the venue. Like, it was really hot, so a lot of reminding people to drink water, asking people to buy the official products like the t-shirts and the towels and things like that. A lot of shit.
Now listen, it's very, very, very hot, so make sure you have a towel. Specifically, we formulated. Actually, the towels are cool. I remember I got a free towel, and I still have it. It's great, cool towel.
Yeah. But and then just kind of like getting the audience worked up to bring the artists on. And whenever I get to do a stage by myself, whenever like the schedule is set up, so one person's on the Palm stage, one person's on the beach stage.
By the way, for context, this is a proper festival, right? So like these are big stages. There's thousands of people. Yeah.
But occasionally, like depending on if someone has a relationship with a certain artist, they want to go up on that stage, or the older MCs. I'm not going to mention anybody by name, but
I'm going to mention one
that you've worked with on the radio extensively.
Yeah, Smiley. Yeah.
Yeah, we always do it together, and anytime he and I have to do same stage, it's incredibly hard to work with him because he does this thing that certain Japanese people in the entertainment industry do when they're dealing with foreigners, and I know he's done this to you a million times. He'll jump in to nitpick pronunciation. And it wasn't even on stage. We were having like the MC meeting behind in the backstage area, and I bought donuts for everybody. And one of the donuts was kurumi flavored, which is walnut flavored, but I guess he was not happy with how I was saying kurumi. And so, like, in the middle of the MC meeting, he was like, "It's not kurumi, it's kurumi," like exactly like I do to you for second.
Yeah, right.
But like,
But we do it because it's funny. He does it because it's a power move.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think he kind of thinks he's being funny, but there's no right answer to that. Like, my first instinct is to try to say it the correct way that he's attempting to teach me how to say it. But I've learned that there are some things in, like, Japanese pronunciation that I just don't have an ear for.
Yeah.
And they can be, like, it's like, you don't have to be perfect. I'm not trying to be perfect.
Man, if I were you, I would have just refused him a donut. Like, oh, sorry, mate, that's it now. You've just forfeited your chance to get a delicious kurumi donut.
Yeah. But so he was correcting me on kurumi, and I tried it his way like 2 or 3 times, and then he was like, "No, it's not kurumi, it's kurumi, and it's not kurume, it's kurume." And like I couldn't even hear the difference, but he kept kind of throwing out different words, and it got to the point where it's like, what is the correct response to this? And so instead I was just like, "Hi." Like,
Take the win. No, Bobby, it's not height, it's height.
I don't know what to do with that, and it just
kills.
Man,
it's awful, isn't it?
Kills the momentum. It totally. He's done it to you a bunch of times on air, hasn't he?
He did it on air, yeah. I mean, and sometimes it was like what the whole report was about. So it was very, very clear that like I would be, it's very clear what I was talking about, even if my pronunciation wasn't perfect. And he'd stop me in my tracks. The other trick that he used was, often when you're doing a back and forth with so I was a roving reporter typically, so I'd be outside the studio, and what would happen is they would have a script and they would feed me questions which I would have pre-prepared answers to, because obviously I'm going to this location sometimes like 10 minutes before we're on air. Obviously I'm not preparing anything, I don't actually know what I'm talking about. Typically it's been prepared for me and I just read it out, right? Or if I'm there, right? And so what he would deliberately ask me an early doors question that he knew I wouldn't have a pre-prepared answer for. And sometimes would even make me question whether, like, on air, whether I was even talking about the right thing.
Right.
Like, he'd even say, like, "Ollie, do you even know what?" I remember I did one on, what are they called in English? Tenji broku. How would you say that in English? The blocks which blind people use to navigate themselves.
Oh,
what are they called?
They're like a textured, raised part of the sidewalk. I'm not sure what the word is for it in English.
Anyway, in Japanese, it's tenji broku. Yeah. And he basically somehow got me to admit on air that I didn't know what a tenji broku was, even though that's what the entire report was about. And he asked me the question in such a way that I couldn't possibly. He obviously used a different word, a different way of saying it, and like you said, like there's no way of getting out of it where you come out on top. Actually, where the conversation as a whole comes out on top.
Yeah, there's no benefit to the conversation. I think he does it because he thinks it's banter. But he doesn't realize that there's no good way to banter back. It's just like allowing him to. It really is just like on the deeper level. It's a power move.
Yeah. Well, I remember one time I was in the studio with him, and at that point because obviously you can see him face to face. I found it a bit easier. I just said, "All right, mate, let's do a little English tongue twister," and obviously just destroyed. Yeah. And he. But I actually think, I mean, we've mentioned his name, so I'm happy to say I do actually really like him. And by pure coincidence, I was doing a preview of Pig in Japan, A Good Heavens, in Tokyo, and I was putting my own poster outside the venue, because that's the level of fame I've reached. And he was ever so sweet. He took a load of flyers, and he said, "I'm going to distribute these," which obviously he couldn't have done. But he bumped into me in the street a good year after I finished working with him. And he was genuinely curious to know what I was up to and did seem supportive. So I do think actually he likes the fact that he's been working with us, with foreigners.
I think so too. I think it's symptomatic of this thing where in the entertainment industry, certain people in the industry only know how to react and interact with foreigners in one way. And that's to engage directly with their foreignness and nothing else. And part of that is making it all about linguistics. And the funniest thing I've ever had happen to me when I was working with somebody like that was we went to do a piece on a certain kind of cabbage that they raise in this place called Wakamatsu, where they have like the ocean wind is like blowing through these cabbage fields and imbuing all this cabbage with these minerals. And the guy said in Japanese, "mineraru ga hofu," which is it's packed full of minerals. And the talent that I was working with at the time turned to me and said, Bobby, do you know Japanese mineraru? And I was like, mineral is an English word, you dumb motherfucker.
It's awful, isn't it?
But it really is. It's that like that one aspect of who you are as a person that's all that they have to work with. And I think
sometimes it's true though. Like my nickname on air was not Ollie Horn, but Ollie Hanzubon, right? And I didn't know the words Hanzubon.
Yeah, Ollie Short Pants.
Ollie Short Pants, yeah, because it vaguely rhymes with horn. And at the end of my report, Smiley was just like, Ollie, I don't like your name. And I was like, okay, well, it's the only name I've got. What do you want me to do? And he went, I think Ollie Hanzubon is cuter. And this was like live on air, so obviously I was nervous. And so I didn't challenge it. I went, all right, I'm Ollie Hanzubon from now on. Then off air, I had to Google what on earth my nickname now was.
Yeah.
I suppose if I'd thought about it, I would have worked out what Hanzubon is. But, you know, it's just comes out of nowhere, doesn't it? Right. So, I mean...
When there's absolutely no context. It's
it's
right. Something in the moment.
Exactly. There's no way I could have possibly go, oh yeah, Ollie Short Pants. And yeah, that just stuck. And, you know, so to be fair, I didn't know the name. Bobby, I'd like to talk about the fact that we've got another linguistic problem, which is that all of our mail seems to come from someone with just one name. We received another message to japanbyrivercruise.com, where there's a button where you can give your cruise feedback, which we resent every time that it's pressed.
Did we get another Brian?
Yeah, and this time the name, see, like you're allowed to submit your name, right? And the name was Another Brian in Fukuoka.
Is it actually another Brian, or because I know for a fact that there are two?
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not gonna read you the email address out on air. Did the other Brians have a 3 in it in the email address?
I don't know, but here's what occurred to me just now is I think that you know how like certain artists or certain groups have names for their fan bases, you know, like Justin Bieber's got the Believers and like Hoodie Allen has the Hoodie Mob. I think that the Japan by River Cruise fan base should be the Bryans from now on. Good afternoon, Bryans.
They sound like losers. Because Brian, right, is listening to this with his second can of Haichu. No, not Haichu. Sorry, Haichu's a Chew. That shows how out of the game I am. That's candy, isn't it?
Haichu is a candy, and Chu-Hai is an alcoholic drink, and I make that same mistake all the time.
Oh, really? Oh, that makes me feel alright then. Anyway, so Brian, bless him, is on his second Chu-Hai. What's he doing? I think he commutes to his Eikaiwa by bus.
Well, let's stop bashing the Bryans because they are now what we call our fans. So, he's got to know that we don't want messages. What does the message say?
Hey, I was standing around an international party when a girl I was chatting up mentioned your show. I put down my paper plate and pulled out my phone for a listen. It's shit. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. So I know we discourage people from sending messages pretty regularly and pretty heavily, but I've got to say, I really appreciate this message. I think if we got more messages like this, we might enjoy getting messages from our Bryans. I love it. I mean, it's great to know that a girl at an international party knows about our podcast.
And is actively recommending it.
Yeah.
Mentioning the show. Thanks. Yeah, it sounds like a great party, Brian. Paper plate. Also, the way that Brian describes this is Brian pulled out his phone for a listen during the party. So deeply disengaged was his interlocutor that he decided to defer the English banter to us, the professionals, on his phone, on loudspeaker. Just like, hey guys, these are my foreign friends. Brian, thanks a lot for sending that message. We have read it out on the podcast resentfully, but we're glad that you didn't arrogantly recommend another cruise. If you, Brian, are listening to this podcast and you decide that you now want to get in touch, Brian, this is what you need to do. Go to japanbyrivercruise.com, click on the button which says something like cruise suggestions. We'll just call it the Brian box from now on.
I think we need to actually adjust it on the homepage so it's a little bit more Brian friendly.
Because Brian, let's be honest, he's depressed, and he doesn't want to have to wade through layers and layers of irony in order to get in touch. Brian's a busy guy. He needs to get to the local ward office to make sure that he can put his Hanko in before his wife does, so he gets custody of the kids. So, Brian, Looking forward to receiving your messages at japanbyrivercruise.com. Bobby, let's hear some news.
Right. So every year a list of Japanese cities ranked by their quality is released, and it just came out again this year. And so
Who decides?
the list is for the best cities outside of Tokyo. So I love, first of all, that this is operated under the premise that Tokyo is the best city in all of Japan. Like, that's the first thing that caught my attention. It's like Tokyo. Man,
I should do this.
It's a given that Tokyo is the best. So besides Tokyo, which ones are the best cities? And I thought that was funny.
I should rank good-looking men. All the good-looking men that aren't Ollie Horn. Okay, so everyone all gather.
Well, of course, that I read the first sentence of the article, and it's exactly that. It's among Japanese 72 major cities outside of Tokyo, Kyoto retained its top spot as the metropolis. Blah 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 blah. According to a Tokyo-based think tank. It absolutely is Ollie Horn going, I'm going to tell you who all the best looking guys, other than me, of course.
And also, how cheeky is this? That Kyoto was the capital till Tokyo wormed its way in, barely a couple of centuries ago. This is their way of properly cementing. What a dick move.
Yeah.
And also, what are they ranking it for?
Okay, so
similarity to Tokyo.
I'll get into that in a second. But the top three, all the top three spots are exactly the same as last year. And guess what? Fukuoka is number 2.
After Kyoto?
Yeah, Kyoto, Fukuoka, Osaka are the top 3. This is from the Tokyo-based Mori Memorial Foundation's Institute for Urban Development. I feel like they should just be a little bit more upfront about how arrogant they're being. Just say Kyoto ranks number 2. Just don't start the list. Just leave number 1 completely off the list and start it at number 2.
0, 1, 2.
But they analyze.
I don't know what the criteria are.
They analyze. Excuse me.
I don't want to hear your coughs, Bobby. I've told you. I want to hear the criteria, please.
Each city's characteristics, and gave a score based on 6 criteria. Economy and business, research and development, cultural interaction, daily life and livability, environment and accessibility. That seems like a lot more than 6, but they're coupling. So the business sphere, the cultural sphere, livability, environment, accessibility, and then research and development. I wonder, what do they look at in terms of
Well, on Roller Coaster Tycoon, which I completed when I was younger. Research and development meant that you had different kinds of benches and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to know what livability means because whenever
research and development factors in the number of top colleges, submissions of research papers, and the presence of global specialist firms.
Oh, so it's a stupid metric then. Yeah.
Not benches. It was not. No, not benches. Surprisingly, not benches.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong. First admit it.
Who would have thought that Roller Coaster Tycoon would let you down like that?
I think Roller Coaster Tycoon developed my entrepreneurial skills because I found that when it's raining, people will buy an umbrella at any price. So it recommended you sell the umbrellas for $2, and you could sell them for $20. And basically, that's the same principle as people that sell butabara at the yakiniku stand at a festival. 600 yen for a bit of meat on a stick. While I'm there, yes, please.
Yeah. Supply and demand, man.
So livability. So whenever I told people I was living in Fukuoka, they would go, it's a very sumiyasui place to be. A very
sumiyasui. And also, it's easy to live in.
Yeah, when people say to me, what do you like about Fukuoka? My stock answer was, it's sumiyasui. And
that's what I would say. That's my stock answer about Japan. People are like, you must love Japan. I'm like,
But from your perspective, it just means you're not shot.
Well, that's the main thing. I don't get shot, as we've discussed in previous episodes. But also, I think it's relatively easy to attain a pretty high standard of living. I was talking to a friend of mine named Brian.
Okay.
And
hey, Brian.
he said we were talking about raising kids and the prospect of raising kids back in the States. And he said, He said in
I know what I'm going to
Japan,
call my firstborn.
in Japan, there is just like any country, there's a lower class, a middle class, and an upper class. But he said there is a certain quality of life that is equally attainable to everybody, even if you're in lower class, even if you're in middle class, even if you're the elite. I mean, you still have access to high quality healthcare, good public transportation, good food, and sanitary living conditions. There's a base quality of life that's very high, and it's much easier to attain than it is like in the United States. And he was saying he wouldn't want to go back because with his financial situation, like he felt like you had to be rich to have a decent quality of life in the United States.
Right. I mean, we can't deny the fact there is absolute abject poverty in some parts of Japan, particularly rural Japan, where like schools are closing. You have children that have to maybe take a bus for 90 minutes to 2 hours to go to a school that is potentially underfunded, and local councils.
No. I mean,
oh man, yeah. I mean,
but that is not abject poverty. I mean, abject poverty is like you don't have enough to eat. It's like you don't have a clean, safe, enclosed place to live. Abject poverty is not direct access to a school without having to ride on a bus.
Sure, I was giving just one example. Well, yeah. I'm confident there are people that are living below what we call the bread line, or I guess in Japan it's the rice line, because Saga was going to do a documentary on basically like families who have lived in this like perpetual cycle of poverty, and how local industry is helping to like rejuvenate and like provide job opportunities and training and kind of, and so I mean certainly our neighbouring prefecture of Saga does have people who are struggling to feed their kids and have to rely on like state handouts and that kind of thing.
Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not informed about this whatsoever, but I would bet money that there are much worse problems with poverty in America than there are.
Classic middle class response there.
But I would bet
there are people that can't eat. There are people that can't eat. Well, I'm going to gamble.
And when I win money, I will donate it to a food bank.
And if you lose money, you'll take some money for a food bank. Undoubtedly. I think you're right. The kind of the baseline in Japan, I think most people, no matter where in the country they're born, do have access to relatively nutritious food, do have access to state handouts at a much higher rate than.
Let me rephrase it like this. I think people like me and you and Brian, if we were to go and live in America, we would be lower class.
I'd love that.
The same amount of we would be the same with the same amount of income, the same level of income I'm making currently. I would not be able to afford nearly as decent a quality of life as I do in Japan.
Yeah,
if I were back in the States.
Yeah, and that is true. Like, that you genuinely can. You can have a lovely restaurant meal for 500 yen. Yeah. I genuinely can't think of an eatery in San Francisco,
which is like $5. $5 or like 3 to 4 pounds, right?
Yeah. One of the other things that I quite liked about Fukuoka's livability was how easy it was to get out of it. I mean, the fact that the airport is so crazy close to the city centre, freakily close. But I don't know. My point with these rankings is surely, like, it depends, right? Like, if you're someone that needs to live in a city that has something and doesn't have it, then it's not a good city for you. Like, shouldn't these be like a livable city for young professionals, or a livable city for the elderly, or a livable city? It just putting it in general terms seems to make no sense to me at all.
Yeah, I mean, they do seem like they broke down the criteria pretty specifically, but I don't know there's no way to say it's blanket for everybody in every demographic. But Kyoto, one of the reasons that it ranked number one again on the sorry that we're not Tokyo City list is it scored
list.
The number one spot in the cultural interaction category, which includes the level of friendliness toward foreign travelers and the preparation of tourist information centers and hospitals offering multilingual support, as well as the number of luxury hotels.
Yeah, well, that's probably true for Kyoto, isn't it? I mean, there's so many incredible. I mean, actually, one thing I would say about Kyoto is they were really ahead of the curve. Like, I think they were the first to introduce a special bus fare for foreigners, because there's like Kyoto doesn't really have a very good train system, right? It's mainly about the bus. I think they were the first to introduce that kind of like one ticket that can let you go on all the buses, because like the locals were getting so fed up of foreigners getting the wrong ticket, spending the wrong price. Instead, they were like, listen, we're just going to fine all foreigners 500 yen. And we're going to let you use all the buses. So rather than like paying 100 yen each time and getting it wrong, we'll just presume you're going to take loads of buses, charge you $5, and just waive it. So yeah, I think they were pioneers in that regard. I will say that they're also extremely tolerant because, like, there's a report of I mean, I'm going to say Chinese because that's how it was reported, but it just seems so predictable. Chinese lady allowing her son to take a dump at King Kakuji. You seen this?
I vaguely remember seeing something about this. This is a while back, though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but like, you know, they didn't respond by doing what you should do, which is like, all right, guys, you're not allowed here anymore. This is too. Oh no, it wasn't King Kakuji. It was the one with the 13 stones, where you can only see 12 and a half.
Oh,
the 13 and a half.
The rock garden one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what's that called? Who knows? Who knows? That's one thing for sure, Bobby. No one knows the name.
No
of
one
that,
knows.
temple.
Yeah.
And it's like beautifully raked, and then someone just decided to take a dump on it. So if you're tolerant of that, I think you can safely say that you are foreigner friendly. Kyoto, that should be their new strapline. Kyoto, come and take a dump on us. If Tokyo won't let you.
That's I think Roppongi's catchphrase. Roppongi.
No, Roppongi is we take a dump on you.